All right, so a few years ago, if you wanted a good life, the formula was very simple. All you had to do was go to school, get a degree, get a good job, and eventually everything would work out, right? Well, not of late because something strange seems to be happening these days and nobody's talking about it. You see, millions of young people are spending up to 4 years in the university, graduating with student debts, and coming out to compete with jobs that either don't exist anymore or don't even require a degree. And at the same time, there are some people out there learning skills online, skipping university completely, and landing opportunities that would have been impossible to get without a diploma. So, what actually changed? Has the college degree actually lost its value? Or are we watching the biggest shift in education and work in generations? Because if the answer is yes, then a lot of young people are preparing for a future that no longer exists in this current world. For a very long time, going to the university was one of the best investments a person could make. And don't get me wrong, it is still a good investment for many people. I mean, think about it. Imagine you were born 30, 40, or even 50 years ago. Simply having a degree or getting a degree immediately separated you from a huge portion of the population. Having a degree was proof that you had a lot of knowledge, you had discipline, and the ability to complete something difficult. And honestly, employers love that. In many cases, simply having a degree, would open or would automatically open doors that would otherwise remain closed. And for decades, this formula actually worked. You studied hard, you graduated, you got a good job, you earned a stable income, and over time, your life improved. Which is why, these days we see a lot of parents, pushing their children towards, the university. Um, Not because I'm not saying it's a bad thing, or you get, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because it is not. They are simply just passing down the same formula that genuinely helped millions of people build better lives. And society actually reinforced this very formula. Teachers repeated it, parents repeated it, even governments repeated it. You studied hard, you got a degree, and eventually, the opportunities will follow. And for many years, that wasn't just advice, it was reality. But here's the problem: the world that built, that very formula doesn't exist anymore. So, what changed? Well, the first crack or issue came when a lot of people started getting what? Degrees. Now, on the surface, that might look like a good thing. More degrees means what? More opportunities, right? But that is not exactly what happened. Think of it this way: if a small portion or a small percentage of people or of the population has something, then that thing becomes what? Very valuable. But then if everyone has it, then it becomes a normal thing. Like years ago, simply having a degree made you stand out. But today, in most industries, having a degree is simply expected of you. You see, what used to be an advantage, years ago, has now become the bare minimum requirement, and that creates a problem: competition. You see, you aren't just competing with people in your city or your country, you are competing with millions of people all around the world who follow the same exact formula: get a degree, apply for a job, and hope for the best. And at the same time, the cost of education, or should I say the cost of higher levels of education, kept rising. In many countries, a lot of young people spend years paying off their student debts long after graduating. And after making all these investments, a lot of graduates still struggle to find jobs that are related to what they studied in the university. But here is something that most people don't talk about. In most parts of Africa, like Ghana and Nigeria, student debt isn't the biggest problem, it's opportunity. You see, every year, thousands of young people graduate with degrees, ready to work, ready to contribute, ready to build a future, but the jobs simply aren't there. There are no jobs. Some of them continue searching for years, some of them accept jobs that are completely unrelated to what they studied, some of them become underpaid, and eventually, some of them, leave their countries in search of better opportunities elsewhere. Imagine doing everything society asked you to do. You studied hard, you passed exams, you earned a degree, only to realize or discover that the finish line was actually never a finish line, because the promise wasn't just education. The promise was education leading to opportunity. And for many people, that second part, which is opportunity, is becoming harder and harder to find every single day. But something happened that completely changed the game, and that thing is none other than the internet. Yes, the internet. For most of human history, information was very expensive. If you wanted to learn something very valuable, you obviously had to go to where the experts were. And at this point, universities had something that was incredibly hard to access: knowledge. Think of it, they have the professors, they have the libraries, they have the research, they have the connections, they have the expertise. But then the internet changed all of that. Today, a 14-year-old with a smartphone can access more information in a single day than the previous generation could have been able to access in months. If you want to learn programming, there are thousands of tutorials out there. If you want to learn graphic design, there are thousands more videos out there. If you want to learn business, if you want to learn languages, if you want to learn photography, writing, there are a lot of videos out there that can teach you how to do that. And all of this, and we haven't even started to talk about AI, artificial intelligence. You see, today people have access to incredible AI tools that can explain concepts, they can answer questions, they can create study plans, and they can even act as a personal tutor that is available to you 24/7. And this created a problem universities have never faced before: competition. Because for the first time, people could actually develop valuable skills without having to sit in a lecture hall. They could build portfolios, start businesses, create content, work remotely, freelance online. And in some industries, employers started paying attention to something new, not where you learn, but what you actually do or what you can actually do. Think of it this way: if a person applies for a video editing job with an amazing portfolio, do you think the employer cares more about the degree or more about the work? Again, if someone successfully builds a software application, does the users ask where they studied? Again, if a designer creates an amazing design, does the clients ask for a diploma? The answer to all these questions is no, because they don't care about where you studied, they care about what you can actually do. And that is what makes this moment very different from the past. The degree is no longer the only path to opportunity. For the first time in modern history, there are multiple paths. And that's where most people get the story completely wrong. Because despite everything we've talked about, I honestly don't think the college degree is becoming useless. As a matter of fact, in some careers, it is still very necessary. For example, if you want to become a doctor, you are going to need formal education. If you want to become an engineer, a lawyer, a pharmacist, or enter, many highly specialized professions, a degree still matters a lot. So the real story isn't that the college degree has lost all its value, but the real story is that the value of the college degree is becoming uneven. For decades, the college degree alone was enough to make you stand out. But today, that is no longer the case, because in most industries, employers aren't just asking what you studied or where you studied, but they are asking what you can actually do. And that is where most people get caught off guard. Because two people can graduate with the same exact degrees, but they end up in different outcomes. One spent 4 years studying and passing exams, while the other spent 4 years building skills, creating projects, gaining experience, and making connections. On paper, they may look the same, but in reality, they are not. And maybe that's the biggest lesson here, because the degree is no longer the advantage, but rather what you do with it. So is college still worth it? Well, for most people, yes, but a degree is no longer a guarantee. It is a tool, and unlike any other tool, its value depends on how you use it. The world has changed, the internet has changed how we learn, technology has changed how we work, and opportunities now exist in places that didn't even exist 20 years ago. So the people who succeed won't necessarily be those with the most certificates, but rather those who keep learning, adapting, and growing. Because in the end, the question isn't whether the college degree still has value. The real question is whether our understanding of success has kept up with reality. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and if you have any opinion or something you want to add to this very topic, leave it down below in the comments. And if you are feeling generous, probably a little generous today, go ahead and like the video. Thanks for watching.